The next area of ethical literacy that we want to talk about is this idea of disposition to difference or pluralism. The reality is that in any ethically salient situation, as we've said, we're never alone. We're always in relationship with other people. Sometimes we have more influence in the situation than others, but we're always having to work with other people in the decision-making process or in the implementation of our decisions. And the question becomes, how do we deal with working with other people? Especially remembering that each of us come into these situations with our own interpretations, our own stories, our own narratives, our own identities, our own value systems. How do we navigate, how do we most productively work through situations together in a way that allows all of us to live with integrity? And that's what this area of ethical literacy is all about. If you think about it, there are multiple ways that we could respond to difference or diversity. And this slide shows you a number of them. For example, you could simply say that actually, if you are different than me, you're not important. Your view is somehow substandard. I don't care what you have to say. I'm moving along independent of you. That denial is probably not going to work, but that's one way of responding to diversity. Another is to say, okay, you know what? You have your approach to how we should live. I have my approach. Why don't we just go our separate ways? And we'll just coexist together. But if you're a nurse trying to develop a discharge plan for a patient, you can't actually say, no, you go your way and I'll go mine to the patient or the physician or the others involved. You have no choice but to collaborate, to work together. So isolationism is actually not going to be helpful for you. You could say, okay, it's fine for you to be different than me as long as you adopt my ways. If you have power, that may work. You're robbing yourself of the opportunity of learning from the other perspective in that way, but you could possibly do it. The reality, of course, is that we are always amidst power dynamics, and we can't actually tell others that they should adopt our ways. We don't have the power often to do that. We could say, okay, we'll find a way together, but really there's no right way of doing this. Your way is right, my way is right, and we'll just sort of choose one to go forward with. Another way of responding to diversity is to say, you know what? Your way is just as good as mine. There's no way that we can decide whose perspective on how we should live, on what should matter, is actually the most justified way of moving forward. So we'll just pick one arbitrarily and we'll go forward. This is kind of a relativistic understanding of what should matter. It's saying, there's no real right way. One way isn't necessarily better than the other. We'll just do whatever. This relativistic approach kind of undermines the idea that there is stuff that really matters in our perspectives. That's the worry, one of the worries with the relativistic perspective. If nothing really matters, then there is no deeper purpose to the activities that we're undertaking. So then there's nothing really driving how we should react to situations, nothing meaningful anyway. Another way of responding to diversity, and the way that we recommend, is pluralism. The idea that we say, you know what, this diversity is good. It's an important thing that we have different perspectives on what should matter as we're trying to navigate life's questions. And that what we need to do is build on each other's strengths, the strengths of our perspective, try to arrive at a common understanding of what should matter most that builds on each other's viewpoints, and then find a way forward together in a way that doesn't violate each of our deep commitments. That is a pluralistic way of responding to diversity. Here's one reason why a pluralist disposition to diversity is so important. The question I have is, how do we arrive at our talk, our understanding of what should matter most in a situation? There are three ways that we can figure out what our talk is. One is that we could think about it for ourselves and try to figure out what should matter most. I'm trying to decide what car I should buy or how I should deal with my transportation. I just go for a walk and try to figure out what should matter most. Am I trying to save money? Am I trying to look after the environment? Do I want a car that's going to last me a long time? What should matter most? Well, I go for a walk, I think about it, and I kind of decide in my mind what I should do. Another way of figuring out what our talk should be is waiting for inspiration. And for some of us, that works. So sometimes in my life, frankly, I'm in the shower and all of a sudden I'm working on a problem and a great idea will hit me and I'll figure out, oh, this is really what should matter most and why. I want to suggest that the most effective way of figuring out what should matter most in a situation is conversation with other people, where we are being transparent to other people about the question we're struggling with, sharing our perspective, and then hearing back from them what they think of our perspective and their alternate perspective. It gives us something to learn from. And that's actually the most reliable way of arriving at the best understanding of what should matter most in a situation. Let me tell you a story to illustrate this. There was a time in my career when I was working at Fraser Health, and we were doing a bunch of work with the folks in advanced care planning. We were trying to really, as an organization, roll out our advanced care planning strategy. And I realized that I don't have an advanced care plan. So I was wondering, what should my advanced care plan be? So I decided to go for a walk. It's the way I usually solve my problems, at least until then. So I went for a walk and I thought about it and I realized that what I love to do is to solve hard problems and to work with people to try to help improve their lives as they work through really hard problems. My work gives me a great deal of meaning. And so I thought, okay, that's the most important thing to me. So I came home and I told my wife, I said, listen, I've thought about it and I realized that the most important thing in my life is helping people through the work that I do. If it's the case that I'm no longer able to do that, I have big ideas about what happens when I die. It's all good. And so I'm ready to go. So if it becomes the case that I'm unwell, my life expectancy is shortened, I'm facing some serious illness, feel free to let me go. She thought about it for a minute. She looked at me and she said, well, that's selfish. I said, oh my goodness, what do you mean? And she said, well, you might not be able to think your highfalutin thoughts. You might not be able to do this fancy work anymore, but your son who loves you might still be able to look after you. He might want a relationship with you. You might still be able to coexist in a way that gives him meaning in his life. Wow, and I thought about it, and I realized she's totally right. That yes, my work is really, really important to me, but what's most important is my family's well-being. And if it's the case that being alive in that kind of situation, while I can't do the work I'm doing, would still be meaningful, for example, to my son, well, I have good ideas about what's going to happen after I die. It's not a problem. So I'm happy to hang around a little bit longer if it's going to actually improve my family's life. Now notice that new realization only came because I was able to be transparent about what was important to me and the thinking I was going through, and I was able to have a perspective reflected back to me that I learned from. So I'm proposing that to get a real understanding, a deep understanding of what should matter to us as we navigate life's challenges, we need to be in dialogue with other people where we can share our thinking and then have that engaged by others who can help us reflect on our thinking, and give us other viewpoints from which to learn. It's by being in partnership with other people that we can actually figure out our talk and then walk it. That's one of the main reasons for having a pluralistic response to diversity.